So good evening, everyone, and thank you all for joining us. My name is Lisa Greig, and I'm the event coordinator for McNally Robinson Booksellers in Saskatoon. This event is coming to you from Treaty 6 territory, the traditional lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis nations. Just to note that this event is being live streamed to our YouTube page, so please be aware of the webcam behind you. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the launch of The Journey of Self-Care to We Care, The Art and Science of the Human Experience by Adrianne Vangool. Thank you to Adrianne for being here tonight and to our guest host, Lisa Greig. Lisa is an author, registered social worker, and holds her master's degree in both social work and education. Lisa is the author of a book about grief for children called Scream, Shout, Let's Feel Our Grief Out. Lisa lives in Saskatoon with her husband Ross and their children Holden and Border. Adrianne is an author, licensed physical therapist, and certified yoga therapist. She is the founder of Vangool Wellness, a holistic clinic with a focus of addressing and eliminating barriers that prevent people from taking part in yoga and receiving health services. Adrianne has published 2 books, Yoga for the Stages of Pregnancy and Early Days Postpartum, and The Journey of Self-Care to We Care. Adrianne lives in Saskatoon with her husband Matt and their children Walker and Hani. I will now turn things over to Adrianne and Lisa. Please give them a warm welcome.
Feels weird starting off your book launch, but thank you everyone for being here. It is such a pleasure and an honor to do this again alongside my good friend Adrianne. So like Alyssa said, my name is Lisa Greig, and Adrianne and I met like 25 years ago on the basketball court when we were newborns. And our lives have just kind of come in and out ever since. And instead of passing the basketball, we now get to be passing the mics back and forth. Yes. Although we have our own this time, we're not sharing.
This is interesting.
Right, I'm like Bob Barker from The Price is Right. I love it. But anyway, it's a privilege to be here to talk with Adrianne about her book. We thought today, I mean, we're going to talk about obviously the writing of the book and her journey of writing it, along with the journey of self-care to we care, but also a little bit just about who you are. I know we talked a little bit ahead of time that whenever I've seen authors speak, or whether you go to live music, it's always the stories in between that mean so much, and getting to know about the person behind the writing, that's really exciting. But along with that, I also want to invite everybody in the audience that if you have questions that come up as we're speaking, let's have a conversation and discuss those rather than holding on to them to the very end. If there's a comment or something you want to share or ask Adrianne directly, we're able to facilitate that with this group, and we would love to do that. And know too that at the very end, there's lots of time to talk individually with Adrianne. If you're not really a crowd person and you want to just talk to her one-on-one, there's lots of time for that. And of course, to purchase and sign the book as well. So with that, are you okay if I just jump right into the questions?
Please do.
Okay, so I think the first question to open with is, why this book and why now?
Yeah, we're just going to start light. No, she gave me a heads up. So first of all, thank you for doing this with me, and for all of you for being here as well. So why this book? I feel like it was something that I didn't start the process thinking I'm going to write a book and it's going to be about this. It was something that was really organic. So it was something that I feel like I needed to share, and something that started to a creative process where it started to come out of me. And it changed form a lot. And so it started off as so the science part of it. If you can get past chapter 1, please. Some people call that chapter 1 is tricky. So it's, you know, it can be heavy in the science, but then it can also be really heavy in the feeling, the story sharing, and the art aspect of the poetry. So it started off as a manual because it was meant to go along with some of the teacher trainings and education sessions that I do. And then it began to expand into something that was more. And at that same time, I was writing poetry and doing this my own creative outlet to cope with those times of pandemic and things that I was struggling with, both personally, but then also as a society. Some of the things that I was just like, this is not right. What are we doing? And really digging deep and reflecting on this. And so the two really started to merge and turned into what it is now. But so why now? I think the times call for it now. I didn't want to wait a year. I didn't know what would happen in a year. And I felt like people that I was working with, at least in the clinic, needed these tools now. But then also as a society, I think I didn't want to wait anymore. I had so much I wanted to say and wanted to contribute in some way to the shift and changes that I feel like we need to see.
So then when you're writing the creative process, because it is a grueling process, I wonder, where did it start? Like, what chapter or idea, or did it start with a poem that then evolved into, oh my gosh, this is so much more? But I'm just curious, like where did it begin? Because I mean, a book forms in so many different ways. Sometimes it's the end and then the middle and then the start. But where did it start for you?
It's a good question. I don't remember which section I would have started with. It was definitely the science stuff, because that's easier. That's more external. That's more, cognitive process. It's less distant from the hard stuff. And so I think it started there. And then I started to dive into the somatic experiencing work. I started doing more reading and trainings in that, and polyvagal theory, throwing out language. And if you don't understand it, buy the book. And Valley Robinson. No, I started to get more interested in approaches that spoke to the body and the nervous system rather than the top down, the cognitive down process. Because if it was just we needed to think about it in a different way, we obviously have tried that. So when people come to my office and things are not improving, or they're struggling and they've tried all these different ways, I realized I needed more tools and a different approach to treat what was happening. So how do I treat the nervous system in a different way? So that is where I started. And then I had to put the book down for a little bit and that down because like many people, I needed a minute to life was hard as a home with, during the pandemic with family, and it's hard to write a book when you got 4 and a 5-year-old running around and they have needs. And so then I started as an outlet writing poetry and having more time in contemplation, and realize, there's some deeper healing that I need to do too. And so at the end of that, I was like, I'm going to revisit the book. And this is the piece that was missing, was like the heart of it, the feeling of it, the art of it. So that's then when I was able to finish the last part of the book. So the 80% was, I really enjoyed it. Writing for me is a joy. It's like my time with myself. It's like a conversation with myself when I'm writing. And I'm a nerd. I like researching. So like reading articles is fun for me. So it's not a chore, but that last 20% of editing is not fun.
That's why there's people who do that for a living, right? But I was like, you truly are those writers. Adrianne will just send random texts someday where she's like, oh, this just came to me. And it's like this poem in text form. And I'm like, you just came to you on your drive to work after dropping off your children and all the other things that you're doing. But it's true. That is, you do have a gift of writing. And I love how you made science interesting in this book.
I tried. I hope so.
Right. No, but for the brain that's like less about science, it was interesting to see those theories really applied into the feeling work as well. My next question then is, eventually I do want us to get to the space of how are we healing ourselves in a broken system? So stay tuned for that. But that journey of self-care to we care. So what's self-care, but also how have we gotten so far away from we care and the needing to get back? So that's where the journey we're going to go on, no pun intended. But just starting with that bit of self-care, because you do teach us a lot of those things. And I think we need to talk about it so people do have tools even to take away with what they can practice individually.
Yeah. So that is one thing. I wanted to write it in a way like I was working with a client. And that's why I think it was also easier for me to write it, because I every day, multiple times a day, I'm educating or trying to teach it, or I'm practicing how to explain things, science, to people that don't have that background. Because the more people I found, the more people understand the why in their own body, then it just arms us with more tools to be able to respond. And to me, that's what self-care is. It's responding to what your body needs in moment to moment. And life happens. We don't, oftentimes that's where some of the tension is we might develop with time a more embodied, being more embodied. And by that, I mean sensing and noticing and being in communication with what our body's telling us. But then sometimes if you're caring for another or life circumstances, we can't put all things on hold and just respond to self right away. So, but it's responding to ourselves. For me, self-care is responding to ourselves in the moments, weeks, months when we can. So recognizing, okay, I just had a reaction there. That's not myself. Note to self, I need to carve out some time in this day, in this week, in this month, where I'm giving myself some more space to give myself what I need. And then spending time with yourself to figure that out. That's the hard work, is sitting in the discomfort. And I think we're very quick and we're trained as a society to look external for things to be soothed and running constantly from discomfort. It's human nature. But and we've talked about this quite a bit, but the people that are able to expand their capacity for healing, for the demands of life, are people that have expanded their capacity for sitting in discomfort. It doesn't mean putting up with a lot of stuff, but it means doing the work so that we can respond rather than react. And so there's lots of tools in here about that, whether it's mindfulness tools, breathing tools. There's suggestions and different approaches of therapy to try that target the nervous system and not just the narrative cognitive approach to healing trauma. And gentle movement, exercise, all these things we know, but it's connecting it to the how and why, and how do we bring it into our day. So that for me is self-care, and it's challenging a bit of the norms as well. So we're going to be, once you notice, hey, I need to respond to this, but you'll start to notice more tension and places and spaces that actually don't allow for us to respond to our needs very often. And it's not normalized.
So what was this, like, how did you take care of yourself in this process? Because you had to sit in a lot of discomfort within yourself as you wrote these words, shared these poems, and shared a lot of personal stories with anybody willing to read this book. So how were you able to develop your own window of tolerance in that discomfort? And what did you do to care for yourself in this process?
The writing it was my self-care. The writing it, the sharing it, the speaking the truth to what I was feeling was alleviating the discomfort. Sitting and not putting it down and was uncomfortable for me. So it was more comfortable. That's when I knew I had to write it down. It was becoming more uncomfortable to not express it than it was to write it down. The uncomfortable part, to be honest, and where I was stretched to a new level, was when people started reading it. Because then, I mean, most of the people reading the book are local, and the things I describe in here and the sharing, right? I love sharing who I am. So I'm not shy about my poetry. I'm like, oh yeah, good. We can have action. Oh, you read the book? Okay. We can have a real talk then. We can skip the surface level, ick, and we can just talk about how we really feel. So I like that part of it. But people knowing, that one chapter, I think it's chapter 6, knowing that part, that was I was a little worried about, and that was comfortable for me initially, about how were people going to respond? What's going to be the blowback? What's going to be, and then once I realized, and so that was scary. And then once I did it and my worst fears didn't happen, okay, well, now I can just connect with people again. So now it's been good. But that was the initial, that was harder for me, was the initial, like, okay, people are gonna read that chapter.
Yeah, I believe that. And I think when you say how people are responding, I think, I would even challenge it to how people would react. Right? Because I wish people would respond and take the time to process and understand where you're coming from and why you're sharing what you're sharing. But I think we are so quick to react to our systems around us. And I think that that's the problem, because we're so intolerant of discomfort or other people's truths that we just want to, whataboutism and not us. And I think, when you share that, what we do to take care of ourselves, if we were taking care of ourselves in a true capacity, we could do a better job of taking care of each other. And so I would love you to kind of take us now on that journey from moving from that awareness of the self and the acknowledgement and all of that. But how are we moving into the we care model? What does that look like? What does that feel like? And why are our nervous systems such a record?
Okay, I'm gonna read something
Yes.
from the book.
Yes.
Okay, this is on page 94. And I don't know who brought me tabs. Is anybody here drop off tabs at the clinic for me? So the first book launch we did, I had massive Post-it notes. And I had about 20 of them. I couldn't even see the page. And then, okay, there they are. There they are. I kept them in case I need them. You can just imagine what my desk is like. Some of you have seen it. Anyway, so then I'm using these tabs. So whoever got me these tabs, thank you. They look a lot nicer. So this poem is called Fall into Change. How do you know when it's time to change colors and shed your leaves for winter? There's beauty in impermanence and stability in knowing the seasons will change, each year looking different from the last. Yet I love you more because of it. How shallow is a love that is conditional upon sameness? The depth of change in loving you because of it is as natural as the changing seasons. I love you when you're green and sun-kissed. I love you when you're auburn hanging on to the last twig of summer. I love you when you're bare and broken open in the cold, deep winter. I love you when you're sprouting new growth of possibility in the spring. I love you because of the way you change and see me through my own. Let's keep spiraling upward with our own rings of growth, knowing that we all take different paths as we reach up toward the sun. So I wrote that when I was struggling with how we were so divided and still are. And it just really, it was like hurts, when you tune in to and so because change and the tension required for change is in nature, it's natural. And we resist it at all costs. And I understand because of control. But change is a natural process. And we live in Saskatchewan where it's supposed to be spring. I'm ready for change. Aren't you ready for change? We're ready for change. So to me, that's when I look to nature. That's when I go for a walk. And so I was on Gabriel Demont Park on that trail there. And I was looking at this beautiful tree that just knew when to change. And that's when I wrote that poem. And that we all take different paths, up to the sun. We all take different paths, and that's okay. And and so for me, it was finding that loving space in us, finding the love again, seeing the love in ourselves, coming to self-compassion. And when we can see that within ourselves, often it's easier to see it in another. And when we can remember we're more the same than different, but a lot of these sayings, we're more the same than different, right? They hit the surface and we forget how that actually feels. And understanding that as a physio, I'm going to give a physio example. If I want to lengthen my hamstring, it's not going to get longer if I just keep my knee bent. I have to push into a little bit of discomfort in the back here. So my muscle over time gets longer. So the cells get longer. And it doesn't happen if I don't go to that edge. And it's the same, it's the same in the cellular, it's the same in the macro. If we change too quickly as a system, we're gonna miss all that important learning and attention and what we learn in attention. And so as a society, can we stay in a loving way, intention? And I think we're in tension and missing that loving piece, the caring piece, the compassion piece. Doesn't mean I agree with you, but why? But can we move a little bit more into that space of love? But it takes practice and cultivating it. We talk about being kind, but just because you're kind doesn't mean you're not racist. Just because you're kind doesn't mean you're not doing harm. Just because your intent isn't doing harm doesn't mean it's not harming someone. But if we're staying in that place of wanting to hear, wanting to listen, not just wanting to be right, then I think we can be in conversation with one another. And so that was really at the time that I was writing the book, at the time that I wrote that poem, I was struggling with that myself. And in my podcast, I was talking with Dr. Jackie Ottman, and I wrote about it there as well in the book. And she studied change systems. She's a professor and she's the president of First Nations University. And when I was talking with her, I was like, but how? Like she was.
That's what we wanted for all of us. Like, no, but give us the shortcut.
I know, and I asked her that too. She told me there's tension and change. And so then I wrote about it. So then I started to sit with that. What does that mean? What does that feel like? It's uncomfortable. And so can we be in discomfort and not blame someone else for our discomfort? Because we want to soothe it, so it's your fault. But it's like, yeah. So finding the humanness, because we do harmful things. So I would say this is one of the main points for me. Finding the humanness. Because we do, and we've justified a lot of hurt and harm by dehumanizing people. So if they're less than human, then we justify treating them a certain way. So we need to remember our humanness, and then I think we can access those parts of us that care.
Like, yeah, okay, now I have to go home and journal about this because it's so much. But so then enter our friend burnout, right? Because I think this like tolerance and tension for change, and we're there, like, of course, people who want to do the work want to do the work, and we can add fire to the choir and those who are motivated for change.
Well, I like that. She's got such good ones. Fire to the choir.
My friend Natalia Mason taught me that one. She's like, you can just, whenever we're talking about this tension for change, I'm like, oh, but we're missing the people that we need to teach. And Natalia said, no, just add fire to the choir because that can help too. So I won't even take that as my own. That's who I got that from. But I do think it's about, what are we doing in these burnt out systems then, right? And the people in the systems, like everyone is tired, and when we're tired, we're more likely to be injured. Just do physio speak here. But how do we? Where do we heal? How do we heal? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, where are we going? Because there's so much burnout that's causing so much damage, and people are so tired.
Yeah, I'm gonna read something else.
This wasn't even planned, but I'm like, oh yeah, okay.
This one is.
This is page 26. Just for the nerds out there that.
For those of you at home.
For those of you at home that have tabs. Okay, this is page 26. A sustainable way to stay present in the place of caring is through the practice of compassion, an endless well of love and caring. It is through compassion that I can care for you and still be me. I can witness your experience and stay present without the burnout that comes with feeling every emotion you feel. This is caring from a place of non-judgment with boundaries. Practice compassionate listening to understand, remain curious, and to witness. Caregiver burnout can set in when we use empathy to perform the work of caring. Empathy is feeling another's feelings as you seek to understand, and at times it can be difficult to sustain while maintaining ethical boundaries. It is vital that caregivers and health workers do the work to recover from burnout for all people and practice in a way that lessens it. Because when one is burnt out, we often become apathetic. We stop listening, we stop effectively caring, and we become less effective. In short, we can cause harm to our patients or other individuals by missing important cues, and we become less able to connect. So,
Missing the cues.
yeah, we're missing the cues. We're all tired. We're all burnt out. It's been a lot. It's been a lot. And there's so much that comes at us so much faster. So in short, what I talk about there is witnessing. It's an important thing. There used to be more time in transitions from going from A to B. Things used to be slower. So our nervous system had some time to recharge. We're constantly receiving stimulus faster, more and more and more. And our nervous systems don't adapt, don't evolve that quickly in the short amount of time and years that our sensory intake has increased. So it's doing practices then that help us to become the witness, practices that help us slow, building into our day time that is not stimulation, but time being, which seems boring, and our attention span is even shorter, constantly checking your phone, our watches buzz, it's constantly being inundated. So the how is to slow and cultivate conscious time to slow. Like we have to schedule that in because there's so much coming at us. And so that's what I would say is starting that practice. And I talk about that in there, whether it's breathing, mindfulness, or just simply paying attention to the moment you're in. And that what it does, it brings us into that rest and digest response in our nervous system, and we are recuperating, we are recharging. So that's one thing. I went on a tangent.
That you're supposed to, you're the author, so you're supposed to go on the tangent. So yeah.
So that's part of the how, I think, is consciously cultivating and planning out the time for that recharge.
And so it's a utopian question, but what's the end goal of We Care? Because for me, I mean, we want a path forward, but I don't want to go, backwards, but there was a world where we paid attention to each other a lot more than we do. It's like let's bring 1986 back, but it's, what is this transition to this model of We Care?
I think I kind of talk about it in the book as, like any concept initially, where this is self-care, this is We Care, but really self-care is We Care and We Care is self-care. Because if I'm more in a place where I'm not reacting to you, I'm responding to you, I'm more present, I can connect with you. I have more capacity to want to know and to witness. But if I'm already at a state where I'm just like, I can't take anymore, I don't have space to hear your heart or to try and understand. I'm just trying here to float on my boat. And so the We Care piece, though, and where I'm trying to get into a little bit more, I feel a sense of urgency more about this, is I've tried, what I tried to get to in the book is that, well, I'm going to read it again, and then I'm going to talk about it. And these post-it notes are just making a comeback. Okay, this is the best way I can explain it. So we need to listen to the parts of our body that are hurting, just as we need to listen to the parts of our society that are hurting. As with our body, I believe we need to cultivate safe spaces and dialogue so we can move through the tough truths and notice what is truly there. Then we can find solutions together that create shared benefit and power and more equitable systems. We are human beings that are made of systems, and we live in systems. What we think can change the chemistry of our body, and how we act can change the chemistry of someone else's body. Nothing is done in isolation. What we do matters. There truly is no separation. In showing compassion toward another, we improve our own mental health. And this has been shown through compassion, self-compassion research. So it's a big question, but I think it's incumbent upon all of us to do the work to take care of self, to build capacity so we can care for others. And I was listening to Michelle Obama podcast, and she said, when the problems are big, go small. And she was saying that it can be overwhelming, but then start with you, start then with your family, start then with your larger community, and go from there. Start with where you are, with what you have, and that's enough. But then when we start to then build our own capacity and we see something, we'll be able to say something. Or we'll be able to say it in a way that's not reactive. And it takes practice too. Practicing, what would I say in that situation? If I was to go back, okay. And then you start to have, so you're not in a freeze response when you witness a comment or racism or something that's just not right. And I think the more, if we had more people that would say the things that they feel to be wrong, that is a huge impact. And so that's what I'm trying to do with the book. That's what I'm trying to do with any chance I have where there's people listening, is to just plant the seed. It's not a blame game. It's about, hey, we're all human. Let's remember that we love and care about each other. And we can also disagree. And that's okay. But then the conversation starts happening. Then the connection starts happening. And then we get real solutions to problems instead of people in silos trying to fix things. The real solutions to these big problems don't come from one group or one person. They come from all of us in conversation. And so I think that's how we solve the big problems. And healthcare is a big problem. I'm in that system, so I'm more familiar with it. But that's really, and that's what I talk about in here, because it's really where that intersectionality between where someone's body system literally is experiencing the effects of a system, a healthcare system, and its issues. And it's not one person's fault. It's not one nurse that did one thing. It's a collective system that needs to be heavily reformed. And there isn't one brain or one solution that's going to do it. Yeah.
So with the book now, like where, I mean, of course we wanted everyone, we want everyone to buy it and to do all the things, but you know, it's like your third born, you know, so it's like, you know, where do you want it to go in the world? Who do you want it in the hands of other than everyone? I mean, okay, we're gonna assume everyone, but beyond that, you know, what's the reach?
I think I want it in the hands of people who make decisions. I want it in the hands, obviously, like you said, everyone I think can benefit, because the tools are written in a way that it is for anybody experiencing overwhelm, burnout, or just the human experience. But my side agenda is I really want it, and that's why I use the healthcare system as an example. I really want it in schools, universities, and it is, which is cool. There's, you know, it's in a social work program. There's some people that are requesting it. University of Regina, nursing school, other public health facilities I've heard. But I think that's really where I want to see and where my focus is. I really want, and with what's recently come out in the news about the Medical College of Medicine, it's in every faculty. It's in every college. So it's not just medicine, they just publicize theirs. I'm speaking at the physiotherapy AGM in a couple of weeks, talking about these same things. So I think we need to stop being surprised that these issues are there. They're there. Let's stop being surprised and let's start doing something about it. And we're like, what can we do? Well, maybe start with your own beliefs and biases. If you're not reading this book, read another. There's so many that are out there. There's so many people doing amazing work. And let's just start with ourselves and then see where in our little spaces. So in my professional body, I'm doing what I can there. And then in your professional body or in your spaces, start to ask questions, start to advocate for certain things. When you're book clubs or in your, just in your spaces, start there. And but that's where I hope it gets. I hope it creates a conversation with self first and healing our stuff, and then creates a larger conversation with others.
So before I go into a little bit of a rapid fire question round and just general Q&A, I wonder, will you read like one of your favorite poems in the book?
My favorite ones.
So give it some thought, but one that you feel that, the people here need to hear.
Okay, since we're talking about love, here's another. It just opened to this one, so it'll be the one. This is called That Someone. It's on page 31. When you find someone who is so lovingly interested in hearing you speak, it awakens a deeper part of you that has so much to share, creating a compressed evolution into the person you're meant to be, to grow to be. To have that someone in this life's journey is the biggest blessing one could hope to receive. The length of time shared may not seem long enough, but the imprint on one's heart will be long-lasting. For to have known that one belongs wholly as they are will create a depth of heart knowing. In the darker days that will inevitably come, we can draw from the well of our hearts remembering, I have belonged once and I will again because of that someone who came and went. So I think we just try and be that someone to somebody, and you never know your impact.
Based on time.
Good job on time.
Yeah, well, that's my job. I got it. Can we do the rapid fire?
Yes.
Okay. I have to read from this. Fill in the blank. Ooh, I know, right? I don't know these. I know you don't. Yeah, she doesn't. Belonging is
Being embodied.
you're called to do something brave, but your fear is real and stuck in your throat. What is the first thing that you do?
I close my eyes and I exhale.
What's your favorite way to nourish yourself?
Nature, forest, by myself.
Fill in the blank. Belonging in your body feels like.
Feels like home. Feels like peace. Feels like an exhale.
Give us a snapshot of an ordinary moment in your life that brings you great joy.
Well, it's with the kids and it's with my family, yeah. And just playing spontaneous. Okay, can I tell you, this is not rapid, this is longer.
I expected this.
So just when we're together and it's not structured, we're in our living room. And Nahani comes out of nowhere and she goes, let's play charades. But she called it something else. It was like, let's play, you act out something and then you have to tell someone about it and then they have to guess. Charades. And we just jumped into that game, never played it before as a family. And that's the most recent one. Just joy. It's just fun, belly laughs. Yeah.
You can just hear her. What is one thing you're deeply grateful for right now?
This is my life. My life. I'm very grateful for this life, for the things I get to do and people I get to in my life. Yeah.
How do you hope to make an impact?
Change systems, less harm, and for people to be more loving. Just small goals.
Okay, that concludes the rapid fire round, ladies and gentlemen. So with that, I am just going to open it up if there's any general questions that people are comfortable asking in the larger group. We'll leave some time and some pause for that And then after that, there'll be an opportunity for you just to go and talk to Adrienne if that's kind of more your style.
This is where you stare. To ask questions. Yeah.
Would you ever consider going back into research, reading more of the research lines of your work?
Would I ever consider going back and doing more of the research lens of my work? Not formally, because I'm too impatient. Quick side story, since no one's jumping to ask questions, I'll just start telling you stories. I had funding and I was going to do my master's in sports psychology. Did I talk about this in the book? I think I did. Oh, I think I did. I'm repeating myself. Now I'm sounding like my grandpa. Anyway, and what I get a visceral response when I think about that, because I just need to be in connection with people, and me behind a computer and the time it takes through research to translate. I want to be the person translating a really smart person's research. That's my skill set, and it fills me up. But the doing of the research doesn't fill me up in the same way as like translating someone's like fall prevention and yoga can help. Yes.
It was 2 years ago, I think, one time, and it was probably actually after postpartum yoga. And I was like, Adrianne, are you just going to go do your PhD? Like, I don't think I finished the sentence. You're like, no, it's way too slow. The research is just too slow.
Yeah, it's too slow for me.
Right? It was like, I'm like, that makes sense. Right?
Because I did think about it a lot. Yeah. Any other questions?
You shared so much that
I did.
takes our breath away.
Well,
Next one question. Yeah, please. Do it tonight. You're always taking up time. I'll take up time. You talked about some of your books are with college physicians, and other books that have gone through various academic institutions, but I have a background in planning, and I know that there is an area where people are trying to make communities more of an area where people can get together and actually visit and get to know each other more. I wondered if you thought of any way of some of what you have in the book could be used as a tool to make our communities more areas where people can, mothers can get together and visit. And I know we're going to find that it's kind of prohibitive because it's so cold in the winter, the parks. But is there anything that have you made any effort to get to the schools, the younger children, and also community planners, city planners? They are actually looking at making communities more livable. And as you say, people can be
I haven't, but that's a great suggestion. And yeah,
Can I share what I was doing when you were talking, because I've read it before.
Yeah.
I've read the book. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And so I was reflecting on the last 2 months that I just spent out at Victoria at a sweet hotel. I've been there many times before. Last year when we went, there was few things happened. We're talking about community.
Yes, absolutely.
This year when we went back, a lot of people have now taken the initiative to go back. So there's a coffee place in the morning, there's social things happening, and people have such a want and a need to do that. And it was such a delight to spend that 2 months getting to know people I've never met before. And the stories that were shared, no judgment. People didn't judge each other. They were wanting to listen, wanting to connect. And that, I think, comes out of I love what you were saying about the I to we to what we really connect with. It was absolutely, I'm overwhelmed yet to think I was a part of that.
That's
And these people, the other thing that I think about, we were all able to afford that. Many people cannot. So how can that be?
And that's the
That-
design piece, right?
That's
The
right.
design where it's not about opportunity and privilege allowing for it to happen. It's built into our systems.
Yes.
I think just like those spaces, yes, they need to be built into systems, but for me, in my life, the dog park, I have met so many interesting people, free, like during COVID, just connecting, healthcare workers and moms that are stay at home, which is like such, it gave me such a sense of community within my community. And I don't think Saskatoon has these like human libraries where you go and you meet with someone and it creates that space to connect. And even if you're not eye to eye on every detail of life, you can still have that humanity.
I'll make one mention of Adrian's work within that is your postpartum yoga class.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's specific to the community, but when he's talked about new moms, sparked my mind, because I'm a mom of 3 young little guys, and I think every single one of them, I went to Adrian's postpartum class after, and I'm gonna cry because Adrian brought me back to life every single one of those times, right? And I connected with Lisa's and new moms, so.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Snuggle their babies.
I snuggle their baby. That's so important. So, and it is, and I can attest to Adrian's work on that, but you say you're not doing it.
Well, I think there'll be so many other great ideas in your spaces to do that, right? But to, because I just have a small reach, but right, it's about community. It's about, and that was born out of need and connecting with it was one moment. It was like, this class is good, but I'm tired. I want to do it for me and not have my baby on me. And then I was like, okay, well, I can do this. I'll get some childcare people. Hey, who wants to volunteer and hold some babies? There's lots of people that do want to do that. Right? And then it's now become such a life, and it's not like, I'm not fishing for compliments here. People don't come to the class because I'm teaching yoga. It's part of it, very small part. They come because for that 2 hours in that week, they know that I get to be with myself and have support. And I know my baby is safe over there. There's people volunteering to hold babies. It's a community. They talk with other moms. It's the mental, social, emotional piece that is more healing than the exercises we're doing. And so that excites me, hearing the ideas that are coming from the conversation of like, what can we do in our spaces that are different? Maybe it's,
I just want to mention the parts, like how nicely you put it, like, you know, how we become so much of a society of us versus them. And now it seems to have exploded even more so with the issues. And I love how you spoke about how we can do that with love. And when we don't always agree, and how shutting them off or staying with like-minded people isn't our answer. And so in that community that you talk about that we're forming, we're trying to form a bigger platform. Are you going to speak more on that as you go further in?
yes, you just teed me up. Are you guys related?
She wants my job.
Is that
Like
your mom? She's wearing a blazer too. You should take the mic. No, I'm kidding.
She wants my unpaid job.
You get a coffee. Sorry. Now I forget your question. What was your question?
Are you going?
Oh, yes. Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to go into C-suites now, corporations, and disrupt, interrupt, and change culture. People that are decision makers, have the resources, have the money, that can then support other grassroots things. And so I'm speaking at a place in May and talking about self-care with a bunch of people in an industry that you would not, that's male dominated, that you would not expect, but their leader is somebody who has, and when you talk to people, I talk about this a little bit in here, high performers, CEOs, people at the height that sustain high performance, do these practices. Because you can be a one-hit wonder, but you can't sustain that amount if you don't know how to sit in discomfort and connect with people. And so he's a leader, or at least those times are changing. The times where now people are wanting more from their employers. We're asking more from our systems, which is good. So it's becoming a leadership up, but he's someone who witnesses that and then now wants that for his employees. And so I think there are people out there doing that, and he's seeing that this actually affects my bottom line when my employees are burning out. This affects my bottom line when clients don't want to come to my business if I'm not inclusive and connecting with them. People want connection. They want relationship, not just transactional, not just surface. Even for things like that are, I don't want to give away who this person is, but even for things that are like not to do with human body, like products. And so I'm excited to do more of that work and change some minds that I thought would be pretty set in stone. And I'm talking about in the way of high performance, because that also is how we speak some people's language. But then it will filter down into them loving and having self-compassion and caring and being more present in their lives. And then they'll just be like rainbows and butterflies floating out of their nose. It's just me dreaming. But we've talked about this, soft skills and hard skills. It's baloney. Last thing, because isn't it hard to stay in a place of love when you disagree with somebody so strongly? That's hard. It's easy to be a jerk, have a boundary. It's harder to do the other.
This is your show, like, so you're forgetting this. Brianna shows up hours late to her concert, so like you were on time, you can keep going. Okay, I think then with that, thank you all for your engagement and attentiveness and questions. And we will just leave time and space for you to interact with the MVP, speaking of high performers.
And I just want to thank you again, Lisa, for doing this and for being just one of those people that's helped me through this interesting time of a book coming out and people are reading your journal, your diary. No, I'm just really grateful for you. And if you liked this interaction, we are having a conference called Like a Mother. Speaking of spaces where we're gathering and trying to do more of this, it's for women and people identify as women, and it's in October in the Sunday afternoon, so you can be bed in time or home in time for bed. Yeah, so it's called Like a Mother, the conference her and I are doing. Thank you all for coming. And thank you for McNally.
Thank you. I'm gonna come up and say a quick thank you to you both for being here and to our audience as well. Adrianne will stick around to sign some books, and of course we've got copies of The Journey of Self-Care to Be Here available for purchase. For our virtual guests, copies are available to purchase online at mcnallyrobinson.com. Thank you again for joining us and have a wonderful evening.